Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast called Unveiling. My name is Jordan Bain, and my guest is Divina and Donnelly, also known as Dr. Ann Donnelly. I've known Ann now for like almost 11 or 12 years. And Divina Ann is an international instructor, guide, healer, and teacher in the Modern Mystery School. She's also a medical doctor in the United Kingdom with almost 30 years experience. And since 2006, she's been incorporating the tools of the Mystery School into her practice. Her passion is bringing the essence of compassion and love to recognize each person's part to play in the bigger picture of world peace. She's also now a best-selling author of the new book, Once Upon a Tinder, a collection of stories and lessons about the relationships between men and women dating, exploring, and finding love. So, Divina Ann, welcome on the podcast.
Oh, Jordan, it's a delight to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, absolutely. And today we're going to be discussing something that is at the core of everything we do in the Mystery School, which is Hermetics, which is an ancient art and science said by many scholars and metaphysicians as well to be the root of all the mystery traditions, all the spiritual traditions, all the religious traditions on the planet are all rooted in the ancient science of Hermetics. And Hermetics is something that, you know, is really both a philosophy and art, a science and more. And we don't really hear that much about it these days. But you know, in our mystery school, we're a Hermetic lineage, and you know, we're working with Hermetics all the time. So for those of you who are watching, who are students of the mystery school, if you've been doing this work for a long time, maybe that's not news to you. If you only recently have started studying with the mystery school, maybe that is new. Maybe it's not easy to see the threads of Hermetic teachings in our lineage. So I invited Dr. Ann, or Divina Ann, on today to discuss Hermetics, but from a unique angle of beauty and goodness, because this is something that we discuss a lot in Hermetic teachings, is what is goodness and what is beauty, and how are these connected to God? How are these connected to our experience of ourselves as eternal beings? So, you know, I don't always know what's going to unfold on these podcasts, but today is extra special in that sense, because we really have absolutely no script, no questions that we're starting out with here. We're just going to talk about this, and we're going to go dive into Hermetics and goodness and beauty, and maybe even tie that into your new book, which is about dating, which I didn't know about until yesterday, which I'm really curious now to read. Because, you know, goodness and beauty are very elusive things in our human lives. I think there's something we're all seeking, but where do we find them? How do we find them? So I'd love to hear from you, Dr. Ann. You know, just so people have a little bit of background on you, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what led you up to finding the mystery school and getting initiated, and then like what your unique passion has been in this work, especially as a doctor, and anything else that you want to comment on, just so people can get to know you a little bit.
Thank you, Jordan. Well, I was born in Ireland and brought up in a farm in a beautiful landscape, working with animals, and I was so passionate about nature. I loved nature. I felt most at peace there. I was a very sensitive child. Around adults and around other children, I always felt that there was something to do. And I didn't really quite understand what that was. I felt that I always wanted people to be in their happy space, you know, in their space where they were full of joy, and that we were being kind to each other. But that isn't the way that we're designed in some ways. You know, we're always maybe a little hard on ourselves, a little hard on each other. And when you're sensitive and picking up these things about other people, my safe space was nature. But in nature, I noticed this cycle of life and death, as it was, playing out over and over and over and over again. And I had a number of pets. My first pet was a cow. Her name was Daisy. And, you know, when I looked at, you know, my short lifespan of a relationship with her, and then, you know, that ended when her life ended, I was one of these people who wanted to understand what really happens. You know, I always felt her close to me. I always felt this sense of her, the beauty that she brought into my life, the essence of her that she gave to me, the essence that I wanted to hold on to that. So as I grew older, and as I went through the schooling system, as I went through, I first of all didn't quite make up my mind that I wanted to do medicine until I was in hospital as a 6-year-old, having my appendix out. And that was such an awful experience for me. I swore I would never set foot in a hospital again at 6 years of age. And then, but in my late teens, I went into a hospital. I was singing for it was carol singing at that time. And as soon as I walked through the doors, I knew this is where I need to work, but I had no idea what that was going to look like. I thought about physiotherapy. I loved anatomy. I loved the way that the body comes together. But when I looked at my subjects, I was studying sciences, and I wanted to connect then to medicine. But for the first 3 years in medicine, it was hellish because it was just rote learning. I was studying all these subjects that just required brain work and no connection to the humans again. But in my 3rd year, we met our first patient. And in that moment, my heart blew open, and I knew that I was in the right place. So that was the start. But when I came out the other end of medicine, when I became qualified and I wanted to study family practice, which is where I could meet all ages and all, potential diseases, and perhaps also work to motivate people to change their lives and to help them to lead better quality lives, I noticed that my prescription pad wasn't enough. And I went searching. Firstly, to, really, I suppose, help myself and to keep myself strong during my work. And as I explored, I first of all went down the yoga path, the Reiki path, the acupuncture path, the homeopathy path, all these wonderful paths. And each one took me to a certain level of understanding, but I still felt there was something missing. That I had a big tool bag on my back that I would pull things out of to help patients, to help clients, but still there was something. And it wasn't until 2006 when I stepped into a meditation class with a modern mystery school that I recognized something. I recognized an energy that I had once known as a child. And that energy as a child was something very pure, very clear, very clean, and it resonated with me. And it was this sense of acceptance that I had when I was in nature. I was never judged in nature. There was no judgment in nature. And when I walked in through the doors of the mystery school, I recognized that again. There was no judgment of me. I could be exactly who I am. As a matter of fact, I was encouraged to be who I am. I didn't have to explain myself away, and that was the beautiful aspect. And I thought, I need some more of this. So I had my life activation, and I went straight to Empower Thyself, which was a 2-day course. And that was my initiation. And to be honest with you, Jordan, I didn't know very much about it before I went, but I just knew that I wanted more of whatever it was that the mystery school had to offer. And I started to use those tools right away. And I noticed a massive shift in the way that I was interacting with patients, in the way that I was interacting with other human beings. Do you remember I told you that before that I was very, very sensitive, and and to be honest with you, I would be quite drained at the end of a day's work. But using the tools of the mystery school, I found myself stronger. I had more vitality. I was able to lift people up to my level of joy and peace without having to go down into all the pain. And that was a very, very, now I could still sense the pain. I could still relate, but I didn't have to live that. And there was these tools really helped me to understand that difference between me and another person. And especially if there are empaths out there that are feeling particularly sensitive and maybe experiencing a lot of anxiety, maybe even depression, because of their sensitivities, then I would say the tools of the school are for you. Yeah. Because they made such a shift for me in that very practical, grounded way. Now, the school is about spirituality, yes, but I find with the teachings, we can take those high-end teachings and bring them into our everyday lives and make them practical. That's what I love about the school. I know a lot of people who love to do meditation, who love to do things because it's a means of escape. A little bit, and may I say, a little bit like doing drugs, from that perspective.
That's definitely how I came to meditation and spirituality. I was like, well, I need something else, and as a teenager, meditation was a great way. I found that. Fortunately, I found it before drugs.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And this is fine to a degree, but how do we change our lives?
Right.
How do we actually make our lives more joyful, more relatable to, more of what we actually want it to be? And, I recognize...
Do you think people believe that that's possible?
Well...
Because I didn't for like 10 years before I found the mystery school. I did start to believe that, but only after I got initiated.
Yeah.
When I did spiritual practices from age like 15 to 25, the only thing I could hope for was some sort of like ethereal enlightenment or sense of peace. And then I would go right back into the sort of daily grind of my life, the daily grind of my thoughts, my emotions. Like my life stayed the same for those 10 years of spiritual practice, except I felt more peaceful about it.
Yes.
But I didn't actually change anything. And so if you had told me before initiation, you can actually make a change in your life and that several years from now, you'll be living a different life, I'd be like, I don't know. Maybe. I didn't believe that.
Yeah.
And I was young and optimistic, and I still didn't believe it.
Yes. It's interesting because when I speak to people, sometimes I talk about the potential, or I often talk about the potential that they have, because I think that as initiates, having lived the path for a while, we notice the potential in others very quickly, because we see that we've lived that ourselves. Right. And when we talk about that potential, sometimes it's easy for people to give up before they even try. And it's like that giving up the ghost. They just feel, oh, where's the point? And this is where the tools are different. If we engage with them, if we use them, and it doesn't take a huge part of our day to actually use the tools. Right. It's like an alchemical catalyst in our lives that actually creates something, puts something into motion, that if we are, it's a wee bit like taking the leap and the net will appear. Our lives then become more radiant of what's going on inside us, because it does set something in motion inside us, and then our life becomes something that reflects that on the outside.
Yeah. So what is that thing that's set in motion? Like how does that tie into goodness and beauty? Because they're super connected.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
And this is where I get really, really excited, because I was thinking about, this aspect of good and beauty. And I was thinking of goodness. When I was thinking of goodness, I was thinking, goodness is really anything that actually helps us to live that godliness that is within us. That brings that forward into our everyday lives. And when we think about beauty, and I was trying to put this into words, but beauty is when the essence of that godliness is expressed in whatever it is that we see as beautiful. Now, that could be anything from, in our modern day world, we think a lot about our appearance and how that is perceived by others. And we have a whole industry related to beauty. And, if something that I do, if I apply makeup, if I do my nails, if I have my hair done according to the way that helps me to radiate that essence of me more, if I take care of myself, then that is assisting me in expressing the essence of myself. And we know you did have Divina Franca on more recently talking about beauty in these terms. She talked about goddess Cleopatra and the essence of beauty that she talked about, and it was very ritualistic in the practices that she had. I'm talking here as a woman, but I know as a man as well. We can do things to help us to sense that, to bring out the best in us. to bring out those parts of us that are the highest and best. But not only that, it's about empowerment as well. This path is all about empowerment. And when we talk about empowerment, we're talking about being the best version of ourselves. We're not talking about being more powerful than someone else. We're not talking about having power over someone else. We're talking about the best version of ourselves, that empowered God essence of ourselves being active in every part of our lives. And the tools of the mystery school, every healing that we receive in the mystery school, every tool that we receive in the mystery school, that is all geared towards this. Number one, helping us to radiate that godliness that is within us, to bring that out and to inspire others, as well as live that in our lives on a daily basis. That beauty which is to express the essence of ourselves in everything that we do. And so these tools really help us to do that.
And why is that hard to do, like, as a human? I mean, we talk about this in the mystery school with Hermetic teachings, that the things on earth don't benefit the things in heaven. And the things in heaven do benefit the things on earth. So what does that mean in terms of expression? That's basically saying what you're saying in a different way. That, the things of heaven, the internal, invisible world of the light benefits the external expression. The external expression, though, doesn't actually add anything to heaven. But when we bring forward what's inside of us, heaven being this, whatever you want to call it, higher dimensional state, this state of light, the state of God, goddess, Linus essence, right? I'm making up a word there, goddess, Linus essence. But that internal, beautiful state of our God, goddess self expressed here does benefit here. And then it can be shared and seen and reflected. And there's a way that leads us to a good life. According to Hermetics.
Yes.
When that God essence gets expressed, then we can be living a truly good life.
Yes. I really do sense that our planetary ways, that we have forgotten this. And our duty as guides within the school is to help people to remember. Because all of this is already within every single human being on this planet. And that is that God essence, that expression of light within. I always, when I went to Healers Academy and I saw that wonderful diagram, of what light really is. And how it really comes down through the center of every single human being on this planet, and that we are walking pillars of light. That very image to me always made me want to remind someone else that they have that inside. And whatever it is, it could be a look, a smile, a word, but obviously within our school, we know what works. We know the life activation works because it brings that light in to activate the spiritual DNA, so the person can become more consciously connected to their spiritual essence.
Right.
So, and once that happens, then that can come in and have raise the vibration of everything that we do. Everything we do, so that it's bringing that light and that hope into each thing. And that, to me, is where beauty becomes expressed. Because that essence then is part of what we actually do. And I feel so passionate about the path, because I know that whoever comes to it can take those tools and go off into their everyday lives and use them to create that godly life. Now, not everyone likes to use the word God per se, but if they want to bring that light into their lives, that divine essence, that source into this planet, which has lost its way, in a lot of ways, in all of our systems, and within our health systems, within our business systems, within our relationship systems, within our, day-to-day life, the way that we look after ourselves. If that is lost to us, then there is a way to really express that again. And that is where this is gold. This is pure gold.
And we lose it easily, as humans, right? There's a way that we forget very quickly when we come here. Like you said, you knew when you were 5, this feeling when you were in nature of being really safe, being really connected to something very pure and holy. But by the time you had grown up, even to a teenager, that was gone. And then finding the mystery school, somehow you felt reconnected to that. And in the mystery school and in Hermetics, we talk about the mystery school is, a hermetic ray energy, hermetic ray meaning purity. And there's a purity to using these tools to be able to stay connected to what is truly good and beautiful. And, Hermetics is really explicit that what is truly good and beautiful is only found in God and nowhere else. And when someone's coming from, many different potential religious backgrounds, or they're atheist, and then they find the mystery school and we start talking about God, like you said, it can be kind of unusual or off-putting, or what do they mean? Like, who's God and what religion is this? And it's like, well, the mystery school is not any specific religion, but yet all religions came out of the mystery traditions, came out of Hermetic traditions. And because when we have a need as humans to be connected to God, but it's not the Christian God, it's not the Jewish God, it's not the Muslim God or the Hindu God. There's not just, a God for different peoples and ethnicities and races and religions. There's God, and that's it. And it doesn't matter what name you use for it, but there's still God. And so we have this need as humans to be connected to that because, in the mystery school, we say it's part of who we are. It's not separate from us. Therefore, we have a need for it. Just like I have the need for my own heart. I can't be separated from my heart and still be myself. Of course, many people live their lives very separated from their hearts. Getting back to your mission, Divina, Ann, of reconnecting people with their hearts. It's like many people live their whole lives without their heart pretty much turned on at all. Of course, it's beating in their chest physically, but their heart chakra, the energy center connected to their heart, which is about love and compassion, forgiveness and acceptance, and many, many other things, harmony and beauty at its essence. And Kabbalistically speaking, the heart center is Tiferet, which translates as beauty, essentially harmony, beauty. And that's where we access that pure inner child self, through which we know the truth. We know the truth in the heart through that beautiful inner child self that is connected to everything, that does have an open heart to everything. But yet, how many people are even connected to that as adults? Many people have shut that down. And one way we open it up is relationships. That's a big heart opener for a lot of people, is finding love. And that's, you called yourself the love doctor in your most recent book. So I don't know if you want to comment at all about the relationships aspect and what it means to bring forward that God essence, in a relationship, or what it means to not bring it forward. How does that relate to our heart? How does that relate to beauty? How does that relate to God?
Well, one of the areas that, or one of the reasons I decided to write the book was because I had come from a broken relationship, and I wanted to express my heart again through relationship. Now, this was 5 years later. I'd spent a long time rebuilding my life and just finding a little bit of peace in my heart again. And I felt I was ready, but actually it was 2 friends of mine who suggested that I, create a site for myself in a dating app. And I have to say that it was through that learning, the different encounters that I had, that I first of all, my desire when I put it out there was to reconnect with my heart again, to reconnect with my body again, and to reconnect just in general with myself as a woman again, from the aspect of a relationship. And what my experience was that not everyone was maybe at that level of what they wanted. I knew what I wanted. And so when you meet someone, particularly on a dating app or in any kind of space where there's a distance between you, you've got technology between you and the other person, that creates a distance. But when we are in the mystery school, we are all about energy. And so it's easier to read someone's words and their energy behind what they are saying. And so the easy thing about an app was that I could, if someone wasn't expressing what I wanted, I could say, look, we're not heading in the right direction here. Thank you very much. I wish you well. Hope you find the love you're looking for, and swipe left. Mm-hmm. And so this is, the essence of apps. It can sound a little cruel, but when you're trying to find love from a relationship point of view, there are certain things that you want to look for. You want to decide, is this person looking for the same things as me? Do we have things that are in common that we can enjoy together? Is there a potential for growth? Are we heading in a similar direction to each other? Do we want the same things in life? And there are a few big questions, that you want to know. Are they the same? And if they are, great. Do you want to live in the same part of the world? Do you want family? Do you enjoy traveling? Because if one person's going to be away a lot, what does that mean? And within the context, it depends on whether you want a brief connection or do you want, a proper relationship. And you have to know that as a person engaging with these things. And you have to be honest. And the biggest thing that I think is most beautiful about any person is honesty. Because when you put it out there, you say, look, this is me. You have to be prepared to be rejected. You have to be prepared to say, look, I know myself. This is what I want. I hope you know yourself well enough to say whether that tallies with what you want or not. And if we've got common ground, then we can, give this a go, give this a whirl. But if not, it's not a personal thing. If your likes and desires are different, we're all different. And I like to think about this world as a huge soup, and you are all different ingredients in that big soup, and we're all different flavors, and some flavors really match together and other flavors don't. And it just depends on what we create together. And if that and from the point of view of creating, good together and beauty together and love together, I mean, the big things that we need are, number one, if you're going to go into a relationship, 100% commitment, 100% love, and 100% acceptance. Those are three biggies, to accept the other person, because the other person is an individual. They don't have to like everything that you like. They don't have to want everything that you want. But if there's common ground and you're both willing to work at it, that is where you can really come and share things together.
Right.
Really share things together. But the book itself is an interesting read. It's all about, there all the different types of love are in there. There are 7 different types of love according to Greek mythology. There can be, and so love does not have to be something that necessarily is a long-term commitment relationship. It can be something brief that you both learn from and move on from. It doesn't have to be, this huge piece, but you need to know yourself well enough to say, is that what I want? Is that what I desire? Is that where the other person is coming to me from? But it's that acceptance of where they're at and not taking it personally when it's not something that you want. We're not here to mold another person. We're here to allow that person their privilege of living the life that they want to lead as well. And if we can support each other in that, that's where real connection can be.
For sure. And the kind of love that you've experienced and gone through in the course of your dating experiences and how that weaves in with your book and all of that, how is that, what role has that played in your life?
Well, it's this book spanned over about 3 years. And those 3 years were years of exploration. And they were, first of all, to help me to understand what it is that I really want, to help me to understand men better as well, and to understand what it is that they want, because people have always come to me with relationship dilemmas and wanted to know what it is, where they go from there. And of course, we as practitioners within the modern mystery school, people who have a knowledge of hermetics, the key to everything is to come back to this concept of really knowing ourselves, because dilemmas happen when we don't know ourselves well enough, or when we do know ourselves but we haven't communicated that. And communication is really important. Honesty is really important, even to the point where we are vulnerable enough to open up to that innocence inside, that essence inside, that peace within ourselves that is willing to be vulnerable.
It's really interesting to me too, speaking of hermetics and relationships, that the first hermetic principle, mentalism, which is basically related to know thyself, to have an illumined mind at all times, would be the goal of mastering that first principle of hermetics. And then the final principle, so we have at the crown chakra, we have mentalism, or know thyself, have a mind that's filled with light, so you can know who you really are. And then at the root chakra, which is related to sexuality, we have the principle of gender, which is related to both masculine and feminine within us, and also masculine and feminine externally, like men and women. And whether we are gay or straight, that's not really even super important there. It's more like what genders are coming together. So there's masculine and feminine genders in everything, according to Hermetics. So sexuality is literally at the root chakra of everything that we're living as beings, not just even as humans, but as eternal beings as well. There's gender in everything. And, these principles go back 8,000 years to the first humans, and they're not going to be made obsolete by modern day politics or by opinions or by perspectives. It's like everything will always have gender in it, masculine and feminine. Maybe we piss people off saying that, maybe not, but the truth remains the truth of these ancient principles. And these same principles have been used to generate, scientific theories by people like Sir Isaac Newton and people like Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla. They've been used to formulate psychological theories by people like Carl Jung. They've been used to write the greatest plays on the planet, William Shakespeare. So these ancient universal truths about humans and the Hermetic principles are very tied into relationships, of course, because relationships are at the root of, when we're seeking a relationship, we always, in some sense, are talking about sex in terms of dating, right? If we're seeking a friend, that's different. But when we're talking about romance and relationships, in the sense of everything that people typically understand, when you say, hey, I wrote a book about relationships called Once Upon a Tinder, people don't think, oh, I wanted to go just have tea with somebody. There's more, everyone, obviously, right? So there's gender, there's sexuality, and that's our final grounding principle. So we can learn the deepest things through relationships. So I kind of interrupted you there to tie it in with the Hermetics, because that's my job in this podcast, is like bringing it back to that topic again and again, so that it all fits. But there's a lot that you've learned.
There is. One thing I will say is that aspect of intimacy, when we reach that point in a relationship, that is where I have noticed that people have raised the most questions, for me as such. When is that when is that right? When is that right within a relationship? And sometimes, it's there. It happens. It's just right. And especially if you've been getting to know someone for over a period of time, I noticed that in something like dating apps, you will have people who are simply on there who simply want sex, just to have that that peace in their lives. That peace isn't PIECE.
Right.
So which is fine. There's no issue with that, as long as whoever they're meeting is really clear about what that is. So it's like that piece, we talk about hermetics, there's hermetic teachings, but how do we make that practical in our everyday lives? How do we make that, something that has that higher perspective in it all the time? And you're right about our minds. I mean, relationships are going to be the one place where our buttons are pushed the most. Because our nearest and dearest, we're here to be each other's mirrors. And we know that from being a guide, we teach in the Adept that each person that we meet is a mirror for us. And that becomes amplified through the initiation, so that we can see ourselves, so that we can really work hard at our issues in this life and overcome them. Right. And, that is what the path helps us to do. It actually helps us to overcome our issues so much quicker. I remember several weeks after Empower Thyself, things that would have really bugged me beforehand suddenly were like water off a duck's back. And I thought, oh goodness. And you notice these things about yourself as the further you go along the path. You suddenly realize, look, that was a part of my life. It's not anymore. And there's this accelerated growth, both psychologically and within the mind, and within the way that we see ourselves spiritually, and within our connection with the divine, and within so many aspects. So relationships is one of those. And so that concept of acceptance, that concept of love, those concepts of really engaging with someone at that very honest and very open space, with that heart opened, and of course with that intimacy when that's appropriate for that connection, is something that becomes divine. And it's there that becomes an expression of beauty. It's then that becomes an expression of something that is really good. Now, remember, you can have goodness in a one-night stand. There can be just so much that you can learn from that if both of you know that is what that is. And you're both willing. But I think for women, it's harder because we are very emotional beings. I'm not saying that men aren't. But sometimes men can disconnect a little easier and just make it about the physical. So when we're talking relationships as a woman, this talks to women who are going back into the dating again after a long period of absence. Maybe the dating scene has changed completely and they want to know how to engage. It's about pulling our socks up as women and not seeing ourselves as victims, but seeing ourselves as goddesses who can engage with another god. So it's like we as women create. That is what we do. We bear the womb inside our physical bodies. So we create everything that comes to us, and we can mold that. And if we see someone coming to us, it isn't ready to meet us at that level, it's okay to say no, thank you. This isn't working out. And again, just leave it there. We don't have to find a person that's a project that isn't meeting us where we want that person to be. I often hear, and I read often about women, I'll take him under my wing and I'll change him. No, I mean, he's another God being who has a right to be how he wants to be.
You won't change him. It's not happening. No.
And if he wants to be a certain way, then who are we to make him or mold him into something we don't want him to be? And that's where I think many women go wrong. If you want something else, go looking for something else. And
he's the only one who's going to mold him into something that he wants.
Exactly.
It's not gonna work.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all deserve, both men and women, to go ask for what we want and create that in our lives, rather than compromising or settling for something. And Hermes says that the only, speaking Hermes meaning referencing Hermetic lineage and traditions dating back to Hermes, who's a quasi-mythological figure, but also was a real person in a certain sense, attributed to many different time frames throughout history. And maybe there have been several different versions of Hermes. But Hermes says about beauty that there's only one road that leads to it. And that's reverence combined with knowledge. In this case, this is knowledge of God, knowledge of the self. So if we have that knowledge of ourselves and we have reverence, then and only then can we really find beauty. I mean, that's going to be in relationships. That's going to be in our lives. That's going to be in our work. But thinking about beauty in that sense that if we don't know, we're screwed. It's not happening. We're not going to find beauty. And then
that sounds so painful.
It's true though. If we don't know ourselves, we will not find beauty. And you're talking about it in very clear terms with people not knowing what they want. You can't know what you want if you don't know who you are. It's not possible. So the knowledge is first, but then the reverence is second. If we have knowledge, this is what I want, but we have no respect and no reverence, then that's definitely not beauty. And that's not something that I would want someone to come to me with in a relationship. Yeah, I know a lot, but whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, see you later. Bye.
Yeah. And I think that in our world today, we see a lot of, now this is not talking about abusive relationships. I'm not talking about that, but we see a lot of women who tend to go into victimhood when their man doesn't respond the way that they want them to. Right. And sometimes that...
Or they take that personally.
Or they take it deeply personally. And the thing is that unless we are prepared, and sometimes as a woman, we don't always, it's not always 100% clear in that moment what it is that we desire, but we need to at least open up to the aspects of communicating it. And the man in our lives needs to be, in a sense, at least open to hearing what it is. Now, we as women need to be mindful of our energy. Sometimes when, we start to talk about something, we can, and I'm sorry to say this, but we can sound as if we're nagging. And nagging is where we go on and on and on about the same thing over and over and over again. But on the other side, from a woman's point of view, if it's not creating what we want, then it gets into this vicious cycle, within that expression of a relationship. And that is really tough.
Well, of course you're going to complain if you don't know what your power is. If you don't know how to go create it yourself, or you do know, but like you're not doing it, then you're going to complain about it. Male or female.
Yeah.
Anyone will do that. Yeah. But there is a tendency for the feminine to stay in that state sometimes and maybe not take action. And then that can create that negative cycle of, well, I want it to be different. But then, okay, well, how? You're going to have to make it different. And that means many different things in a relationship. Right? Yeah. Sometimes that means just a conversation. Sometimes that means see you later. Sometimes it means pull me closer. I really need you right now. Could mean a lot of things, right?
Yeah. It's like, as when we come together as a couple, it's like two circles intersecting. And, you have that part in between, which is where we come together to have our common goals and to create something together and something that's holy and sacred between the couple. And it's, no one else gets in there. That's really, really important, that sacred space. But then you have this whole other part to each individual that is outside the couple piece. And it's how that evolves and how that is evolving and what we're doing as individuals to make that happen. And sometimes when people go into a relationship, they expect the relationship to continue to work on the rest of this. They put the blame on the relationship if this isn't working out, or they project onto the relationship if this isn't working out. But in actual fact, this is personal responsibility.
Right.
And it's, there are some beautiful writings around this. Cahill Gibran does beautiful pieces around, marriage and coupling about being two pillars where you stand tall in your own power, in your own life, and you reach out to each other to create, together, because you are in that commitment together. You're in that commitment to create something in this space, this sacred space together. So I think that that's an important point for individuals who are either seeking a relationship or who are in a relationship, that you still have responsibility for yourself and your goals and your dreams and your, what it is that you want to create in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that responsibility is, everything in Hermetic teachings, it comes back to the self. And not in like a selfish, narcissistic kind of it's all about me sort of way, but it comes back to being ourselves is kind of the only answer. There's not something out there that will change us.
Yeah.
If the universe truly is mental and everything that happens within us is going to happen outside of us. So those are the first and second Hermetic principles, mentalism and correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without, is correspondence. Then I can't change you. It won't happen. Only you can change you. And anything that I do to you, could I hurt you? Yes. But I can't change your essence. Could you hurt me? Sure. But you can't change my essence. And so if we're going to apply that to relationships, we have to resonate with ourselves enough to know ourselves and then be able to see and honor that in somebody else. And if that connection's not there, honor ourselves enough to move on and not try and create something that isn't. Because Hermetics is all about seeing true reality. There's 7 basic principles to true reality. And if we're not in touch with one or more of those principles, we won't be in reality. And the only other place to go other than reality is fantasy. And living in fantasy, I don't mean sexual fantasies. That's great. Have whatever sexual fantasies we want. Beautiful. But the reality of the relationship doesn't work if we're living in fantasy. It doesn't work if we're disconnected from what is. And what is begins with us, and it begins with our minds. It begins with knowing what's in our minds. So as that plays out through those 7 Hermetic principles, it goes into our minds, and then we see it reflected outside of ourselves, and then we speak about it. We attune to the vibration of it, and then we polarize with it in our hearts, and we realize that there's a spectrum of feelings and emotions, and then we realize that there's rhythm, and those emotions move all the time, and there's cause and effect. Like if I do this, then that will happen. If I say this, then you might respond in that way. And then there's the actual gender and the combination of gender that leads to, sexual experience, that leads to that combination and recombination of male and female forces over and over and over again, that creates and recreates everything. And good relationships have all those principles going, but that's not the norm on Earth. To have a really good relationship where all of that's working, and you have those 2 pillars of that, whoever it is, man and man, woman and woman, man and woman, standing separately but together, standing in their power, flowing to each other, being vulnerable to each other, creating something together out of that self-knowledge.
It's not, but it is possible.
It is possible.
And the piece that, if we're waiting for a relationship like that, or if we are creating it, or we're in the middle of it, is the piece to get to know ourselves. And we know through the Universal Hermetic Great Kabbalah, and I know what you're an instructor, Jordan, and, it teaches us to ask the big questions, of ourselves in our life. Like, who am I? What am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? And what is my purpose? Right. And those questions are so essential to that ethos of getting to know ourselves. And those are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves every day, which will, sorry, that's just my little alarm, which will help us to understand the important answers that will take us forward and that project us forward. Like each one of us goes through difficulties in life. We are presented with challenges all the time. How we respond to those is always a good guide to ourselves as to where we're at.
Right.
Am I really triggered by this? Looking at our reserves, looking at the things that we have that can help us to, pick ourselves up and see something from that, as you say, that higher perspective, that hermetic teaching will really give us a grasp again of, sometimes it's hard to be completely in control of everything. Sometimes life throws us curveballs. But what we can do is we can redirect. We can work with something so that we can get the best from it. And we can re-steer ourselves back into a good place again. And when we talk about goodness, the important thing is to constantly move forward, to progress, to understand that this life is about forward motion. And very often I find that when people come to me who are very anxious, who are very depressed, it's something that's holding them stuck in a particular point in their lives, and that inability to move forward, that inability to push through. And that's where the tools are so important, because they free us up again. They give us that, first of all, the tools to move forward, but also the healing goes to that deepened space where we're able to connect to the spiritual catalyst that will help us to move again, that will help us to take even if it's a baby step, it's still a step.
Right. Absolutely. We're over our time here, which is awesome, but we got to wrap up. So yeah, I mean, there's not an easy way to summarize everything we're talking about. I love what you were just saying about using the tools, moving forward, constantly, healing ourselves, knowing ourselves, and that if we can do that, we are going to improve our relationships. We're going to improve our experience of goodness in our own lives and improve our experience of beauty. So yeah, if you all need a review, just go replay the episode and digest it all one more time. So Divina, Ann, thank you so much for being on this afternoon, my time, this evening, your time. Maybe we will have to do another one of these in the near future and talk more about this, because I loved our conversation this evening. So
thank you so much, Jordan, for having me. It's been absolutely lovely. And thank you for your time. It's always lovely to bring the Hermetic principles into everyday life, and also to raise everyday life into something that, all of us can experience joyfully, lovingly, and bringing beauty into everything that we do. Absolutely.
Thank you. And for those of you watching, if you like this podcast, it's called Unveiling. You can find it on YouTube. You can subscribe there. You can follow me on Facebook on Jordan Bain, and follow us, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and tune in next time for more goodness and beauty. So thank you all. Have a wonderful night.